Thanks for tuning in to Proline TV for another starting lineup edition. Saturday night. Matter of fact, we're about 24 hours away from the race. That's right. They're starting this at about 7 o'clock on a Sunday night for whatever reason. But anyway, we have a Sunday night race. So there's that. And we're going to take a look at qualifying and practice for the race, which just concluded several minutes ago. Don't forget, you can take a look at the full in-depth preview of the race CJ and I did just a few days ago. Normally, we air it on Tuesdays late in the afternoon, or right around the afternoon. Yeah, probably pretty late, 4 o'clock. But anyway, keep this in mind too, because we did air the show live this past week, and we're aiming to do that more often. Not definite, but that's what our goal is. Every Tuesday around 4 o'clock. Sometimes we'll have to change that, but most of the time it looks like we're going to try to go live. So that'll give you an opportunity to interact with us during the show, questions, comments, things of that nature. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss one of those live shows as well. Okay, let's get right into it. And don't forget, from what we talked about the other day, if you were with us, manufacturing, little bit of an edge, but that's only for Chevy and Toyota. They've got really the edge when it comes to Ford and the three of them. And that's because even though Chevy's won the first three, and yes, Ford did win last year, for the most part, it was a fluke. We showed that in our earlier video this week. Matter of fact, if you check that out, we went about 10 minutes, 15 minutes just on the remaining laps that went, 30 laps overtime last year, and how everything transpired, and the wrecks and the craziness, and Logano won on fuel mileage. And yeah, it was just nuts. So that was just a nutty outlier in our minds. But the first three races here at Nashville, all won by Chevy. Toyota did fine. It wasn't like it was all Chevy. They won the races, and they definitely have the edge. But Toyota was pretty good here as well. But Chevy, if you just take a look at this first 3 years, really strong with the wins, also good in practice, good in qualifying, but Toyota also good in practice and good in qualifying. So that's why there wasn't a big edge coming in, but we just figured whatever would happen here today, kind of guessed it would have to be Chevy, Toyota, one or the other, and that's what we got. So let's go ahead and take a look at it and see how the day started in practice. Okay, so there you go. It started with two Toyotas, the fastest in practice, Tyler Reddick and Denny Hamlin. And then we got a couple of Chevys, back to a Toyota, and then off we go as far as the top 10 is concerned. Carson Hocevar, Michael McDowell. What a surprise to see them in the top 10 in either a practice or qualifying session on a Saturday. Brett Keselowski, 6th. Nice. Brad Keselowski's starting to finally maybe get something. Good for him. I also think that because of the disappointing start to the season, he's turning into maybe a pretty good long shot play. You know, one of these drivers that you want to see if you can make some money on by throwing a couple of bucks on him each week, because we know how good he is over his career, a championship caliber driver. So, anytime, he's going to go through the peaks and valleys of a season, which NASCAR is. Remember, it's how you end the season, not how you begin it. Even though Brett Keselowski, the results aren't there yet, clearly. But still, I think that's a good thing. We're handicapping this, so that gives us an opportunity to make some money if he does come through. I haven't picked him yet all season, but I'm starting to get a little bit closer towards potentially doing that. I still know I'm not going to pick him this week, but we'll get into whether or not I think he is, a pretty decent long shot play after we take a look at the starting position. Briscoe looking good again this week. Chase Elliott, that's important. Having speed for Elliott, very important. We haven't seen a whole lot of that this year. Now let's take a look at the rest. And disappointing for Christopher Bell and Ryan Blaney, only a top 15. Bowman, disappointing 22nd. And look at the disappointing 24th practice run from Kyle Larson. Kyle Busch, I thought he was going to be faster. Buescher, not so fast. Logano, really slow, 32nd, defending his championship. So what did we find out about practice? Okay, well, Toyota had the top 2, as you can see there, and they also had 3 of the top 5. Chevy had 4 of the top 8. So, sort of like what we started the show off with, once again, it's Toyota and Chevy because Ford only had one in the top 14, just one, and that was Brad Keselowski, none in the top 5. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at qualifying now. Actually, what's I would like, yeah, let me do this first because I would like to try and surprise you in case you haven't seen it yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so here's qualifying. So who is on the who's on the pole? Well, we know it can't be Chase Briscoe because he was on the pole last week. That's right, Chase Briscoe. Believe it or not, on the pole. Yeah, my third pick this week, and I feel really good now with Chase Briscoe at 22-1, I believe. So we're not going to get 22-1 now. Not after pole last week and a good finish last week and a good finish the last 2 weeks and a pole back to back. It's going to be very interesting to find out where Chase Briscoe's odds are going to be now. Very interesting. I'm going to guess that I think they may overextend. I'm going to guess that most books will have him in single digits now. But I think he should be about 12-1. That's what I'm going to say. He should be. If you get anything better than 12-1, that's awesome. Hopefully you took him at 22-1 like I did. And that's another reason, by the way, to watch our shows early in the week. I know it's early in the week and sometimes your mind ain't into it, but the reason that we really started doing these earlier in the week years ago was because we understood, well, we've got just about all the information we're going to have on a Tuesday as a Friday. There's no difference. So let's get the information out as soon as possible so we could take advantage of the odds before they change with qualifying and practice. There's Denny Hamlin, another Toyota. So we've got top 2 Toyotas in practice, top 2 Toyotas in qualifying. There's an edge now for Toyota and Denny Hamlin, my top pick. So I have 2 of my top 3 picks from Tuesday sitting there on the front row. Not feeling good, though, about Kyle Busch. But we'll see how he qualified. Anyway, Briscoe and Hamlin looking real good. And, of course, Hamlin, when you look at it, he's got a low number already, though, at 5-1. So I don't really think that's going to drop much. The only reason some of these odds might drop is if Kyle Larson doesn't qualify well. If Kyle Larson qualifies as disappointing as he did in practice. But how rare is that? Okay, so Denny Hamlin, let me get this over here, has never won here. Okay, and he was 12th last year from the pole, leading 70 laps, 3rd in 2023 from the 8th position, led 81 laps. And in 2022, on the pole again, led 114 laps and finished 6th. So in the 3 next-gen races, Denny Hamlin has done just about anything but win at this track. So he's had 70 or more lead laps in the last 3 at Nashville. 70 or more. That's highly impressive. And the only issue I have with Denny Hamlin and another driver we're going to get to in just a little bit is just they're not going very well. I mean, Denny Hamlin, if you look over the last 4 results, no top 15s. So this is like the coldest spell Denny Hamlin's been in. We'll see if he can get out of it on Sunday night. William Byron and Tyler Reddick. And there is the other guy that is also kind of struggling a little bit, Tyler Reddick. That's why I was a little bit concerned with taking him last week, as I mentioned. And he just didn't have it last week. You know, it looked like he had the car, but he just couldn't get the car into he kept floating around the top 5, outside the top 5, and he just couldn't make the push. And then he just tailed off at the end. And that's he's a very, as we've said before, very streaky driver. So, that's the thing that concerns me. 3rd here last year, 2nd the year before that. So first 2 starts here, nothing. Last 2 starts here, pretty strong. Even though his result wasn't good in 2023, he had a really good start, leading laps and all that. But last year was definitely his best result by far at this racetrack. He had never had a top 10 before. But the other way to look at it is that was the freaky year last year. And he really finished third because he was coming on strong with the 4-tire pit stop. And a lot of the other drivers had, 2 tires, or they had older tires. And so he was flying. And all those, matter of fact, if he had one more caution, he probably wins the race. And they had 4 of them, something like that. So he just needed one more, but he couldn't get it. So I do think that matters when you're looking at a grand scheme of things. But hey, I mean, he's driving a Toyota, and they're really fast right now, as you can see. All right. Byron. Have to talk about Byron because of the Chevys. Okay. So once again, you take a look at the Chevys, the first 3 years, and this is really what matters. Again, because Logano, a Ford one, he started 26th last year. Just look, it was weird. But in the 3 years prior, the regular results, all Chevys, all started in the top 5, and 2 of the 3 had their final practice in the top 5. Elliott was the only one on the outside. He was 18th. Okay. And the manufacturer of the winning driver, which was Larson, Elliott, Chastain. Larson, the year he won in 2021, Chevy had the top 7 in practice. Elliott, Chevy had the 3 of the top 5 in both practice and qualifying, and Chastain, same thing. 3 of the top 5 practice and qualifying. But they're both strong. Again, we talked Toyota top 2 in both, and Chevy 2 of the top 5, 4 of the top 8. So if Chevy or Toyota wins, it's going to be another year where we're going to be able to say that. Next year, I'll be saying the same thing. But if Byron wins, then we're going to be able to look at a serious trend, because then we're going to be able to go, we've got 4 Chevys winning that all started in the top 5, and 3 of them had practices in the top 5. So that is if Byron is to win, and he is definitely someone to look out for. No question. He was, the 3rd choice, I believe, coming in. What was Byron? He was actually tied for the 3rd with Bell at 6-1. But the reason why, I don't know why, again, you can go back and we talked about Byron, but just keep in mind that Byron, in the 4 results here, he hasn't led laps here. So he doesn't have any history here of leading laps. If he has, it's only been a couple. And he's had 2 bad results, 2 top 10 results. And he's also had 2 top 5 starting positions. So he's started in the top 5 before in 2 separate occasions. And they were the 2 races that he ended up finishing the best, 3rd and 6th. So it's a good sign for William Byron if you want to take him this week, considering he'll be starting a really good 3rd and practice a really solid 4th. Okay, there's Keselowski again. There's that Brad Keselowski again. So he was 25-1, and I got to believe that with 2 6th place finishes, that'll drop, but I can't imagine it's going to drop too much. I still think that there's too many other drivers to keep an eye on, too many other better drivers having better years. So you'll still get a good number. I'll tell you right now, if you get anything like 15-1 or lower, forget it, because he doesn't deserve to be that low. He should remain 20 to 25-1. Keselowski has never started inside the top 5. He did start 5th last year, okay, but he finished 25th. This has not been a good track for Keselowski. He's never finished in the top 10. Doesn't have anything to show for here. Ford is not fast. Another reason at this track, another reason why I think you need to avoid Keselowski if the odds drop. But if you can get 25-1, he's a decent long shot. Chastain, yes, Chastain definitely a good contender here. There's no doubt about that. My long shot pick last week, and also Kevin Rogers had him as his top pick at 22-1. So Kevin did a great job on that one. But anyway, Chastain crashed in this race last year from the 20th position, still led 45 laps. He tried to go back-to-back. Matter of fact, could have won, and we showed the highlights last year, but he wrecked. He was one of the drivers that had an accident on one of the restarts. So he came that close to go back-to-back, and look how fast he is this week. So look out. By the way, when he won, he was on the pole leading 99 laps in 2023. And the other 2 prior results were 5th and 2nd. So he's gone second, fifth, first, would have finished in the top 5 if it wasn't for the crazy restart nonsense. That would have been 4 for 4 top 5s. You don't see that. Pretty much because there aren't many tracks that just started 4 years ago. But you just don't see that, where many drivers have come into a race that we've talked about this year where we go, oh, yeah, the last 4 results have been all in the top 5. That just doesn't happen. Now, we didn't finish in the top 5 last year, but you get the point, which is one of the reasons it's hard to be 4 straight in the top 5 because shit happens. Anyway, he was 12-1, and you're looking at 5th and 7th. That was the practice run. So, look, I think that's good odds for Chastain. And now that they might come down a little bit now. But look, I think that's a solid number. The only thing is, can he win back-to-back? And we know how difficult it is to go back-to-back, but I think he's a solid play, no doubt. Christopher Bell made an improvement from his 14th practice run to 7th, so that's nice. And he's driving a Toyota. This is CJ's top pick. And, you know, I think it was one of those situations where if our picks had switched and CJ had the top pick and I did, we might have switched picks. So we both liked both of these drivers, Hamlin and Bell. And Bell finished started third last year and led 131 laps, but got into a wreck. And then the other results, all top 10s. Okay, now he's only practiced in the top 5 once, and that was last year when he led 131 laps. Here he's 7th, which is his second best starting position at the track. Now, the practice run isn't what we're looking for, I'll admit that. And he's going to be a short price. So, again, this is a Saturday night. I would go with some other drivers because, again, I started with Hamlin, and I would not go with Bell as well because I would never take 2 drivers with low odds. I mean, I have a hard enough time taking 1 driver with low odds. So, but hey, if you want to skip on Hamlin, I know there's a lot of talk about him being whisked off to be with his wife for the birth of their child. And look, that's something that we can talk about next week because I think that's a topic. I really do. So, hey, if he leaves and he's winning the race and he loses the race because he leaves, well, you've been warned. And then Michael McDowell. I mean, do we really need to talk about Michael McDowell? Okay. Logano and Buescher. Oh, big improvements for Joey Logano. Top 10 after an extremely slow practice run. So they caught something there, which is nice for Logano. Chris Buescher is another one of those really nice long shot plays that eventually you get the feeling, sort of like Bowman and maybe now Keselowski and maybe now Briscoe, where they're going to be in the 20s, but eventually they're going to win. They're going to win a race. So if you're going to be able to catch them when they win that race or not, that's the tricky part. Buescher, as far as this particular race, the Ford is the problem. There's no doubt. But his best race was last year when he finished 5th and qualified 9th. So that is a good sign. And you're getting decent odds with Buescher. Again, Buescher comes in at 25-1. Same odds as Keselowski, but I mean, I guess I'd rather go with Keselowski if I'm going to pick one of the two. Elliott and Wallace. Both of them are nice plays because of the odds, and I don't think the odds will change much. Elliott 14-1, and the one thing that we have really been looking for out of Chase has been speed. So this is nice that both of his sessions were reasonably solid. I mean, fast in practice, 3rd, that's what we like. 11th here, as you can see, at 14-1, driving a Chevy. Now he's won the race before, so he'd be the first one to win 2 in Nashville, but we've only had 4. Elliott also has a 4th place finish a couple of years ago, defending his title. I don't know. And he was a solid 6th last week. I get the feeling Chase is getting there. I really do. What I'm saying is, even though he's like top 5 in points, where he's going to be beating some laps and winning a race. And when that will be, I don't know, but this might not be a bad week. Chevy, he's won here before. You're getting maybe 14-1. I still think those odds should be pretty similar. So, hey, I think Chase is a solid little play there if you're looking for someone outside the heavy favorites. And Wallace is a good play too. Finally, we got value with Bubba Wallace, as we said the other day. The 25-1 nonsense wasn't working for us. Even he was down to 15 and 18-1 in some weeks. Forget all that. Now he's 50-1. And I don't really think it'll drop tremendously. Maybe it'll go down to 30 to 1 or 35 to 1. But that's okay. I'm all right with that, especially because I was able to now to see that he had a couple of pretty good runs. So yeah, take a look at Bubba Wallace overall at this track. You know, he doesn't have like any sort of positive history except for last year. The good news is if you want to look at it this way, he's finished in the top 20 all 4 years, top 15s all 3 years in the next gen, 7th last year from the 24th position. So, okay. And hey, he's Reddick's teammate. Reddick has also been hot fast the last couple of weeks. The results, again, haven't necessarily been there for either driver lately, but you're getting a big number with Bubba Wallace. And I definitely think he's one of those long shot plays that would make a lot of sense. All right, now let's go through the rest of them. And where is Kyle Larson? Well, look at Kyle Larson. Do you think there's something distracting Kyle Larson? So Kyle Larson, 28th in qualifying after practicing 24th. I mean, that is amazing. So this is the big story as far as the odds and everything. What will the odds be for Kyle Larson? Because he's basically been like the favorite almost every week, okay, for the entire year. So will they continue to ignore the speeds and still make him the favorite? I think they might, but I'm going to go ahead because there have been a couple of races where he hasn't been the favorite, but he's still right there. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not talking about the super speedways. I'm meaning Daytona, Talladega. So maybe even Atlanta. But I'm going to go ahead and say Hamlin will be the favorite. He's got to be the favorite because he was 5-1. Larson was 4-1. Now, remember, we talked about this the other day. Larson, yes, he dominated here in 2021 pre-next gen, but thank goodness next gen came along because that means this track would have been terrible with the old car. It would have been boring. Nobody would have wanted it. Okay. Since then, even though he's finished in the top 10 in all 3 races, top 5 and 2, he hasn't led a lap since the win. No laps led in next gen, and he was 4-1. That's why we wanted nothing to do with Kyle Larson. Now we had no idea he was going to be this on today. No idea. So that's just cherry on top. Look, if you're going to give me 10 or 15-1 on Kyle Larson, which he deserves to be, maybe he really should be like about 15-1 now. He should be. I'm sorry, but that's just the bottom line. And I'm not going to get 15-1. It's going to be 5-1, 6-1. So why on earth would I take Kyle Larson? Just like we talked about last week, there is no value whatsoever. So there you go. I don't even think you needed me to go on that kind of rant. All right, next up. Ricky's another one of the deep long shot drivers. I liked him last week. Again, it wasn't one of my top picks. He's going to be one of my long shot picks soon if he keeps this up. He's flirting. And there are some drivers now like Zane Smith, even John Hunter Nemechek, AJ Allmendinger. You look at AJ, he starts 17th and he qualified, 11th, which is okay. AJ's picked it up the last few weeks. Matter of fact, if you look at AJ, the reason we thought he was a decent long shot at 100-1 was because in the 2 races the last 2 years, 11th and 10th. Now, this is also important, okay? And this has been the problem with AJ, is his average starting position is 20.3. So this starting position is 17th, which is the second best he's ever had here. So I would have liked to have seen a top 10 out of him for me to really like him. But 10th and 11th, the last 2 years here, he might want to be a top 10 pick. You want to keep an eye on him. I don't know, maybe get 5-1 or 10-1 on something like that. But Zane Smith was second here last year, again, because of the cautions, but still that's pretty cool. And he has a 2.7 average in the Truck Series in 3 races at this track. Also 7th in the Xfinity Series in 2023 in his only appearance in that series. So this has been a good track for Zane. So yeah, and John Hunter, I know he doesn't look good at all today, but he was another one of these deep long shots, if you take a look at, that I think deserves to be someone that might maybe get lucky, because there's always going to be one win a year on one of these types of tracks where some deep long shot wins, and you're like, how did that happen? So we're always wondering who that will be. And these are the drivers that I think fit that bill. John Hunter Nemechek could be. He has an Xfinity Series win at this track, by the way. Keep that in mind. And he's actually not having a bad season, but not a good day today for John Hunter Nemechek. Ryan Blaney, my boy Ryan Blaney, a very disappointing day again. You know, they've got to get going, but am I worried? No, because this is typical Ryan Blaney for the past several years. This is not when they're at their best, even though the results look good coming into last week. We saw what happened last week with the accident. Is that going to be the first step in a slide again for Ryan Blaney? It's possible, but you got to give him the benefit of the doubt for at least one race. He was sixth here last year, led 26 laps from the 18th position. But again, that's what's missing from Ryan Blaney right now. Even though the results have been here lately, he's not qualifying and practicing very fast, or not getting fast speed out of that car lately. And that's what's holding him back. And then, by the way, Priest just hasn't looked good so far. And I think that might have been CJ's long shot, I believe. Gibbs, he's continuing to disappoint. Bowman, a big disappointment. 24th, not happy with that. Same thing with Kyle. I thought he was going to do better than that, because Kyle, if you look at it, he was, ninth a couple of years ago. But most importantly, he was about to be a top 5 car last year when he crashed in one of the late restarts. And he's led 10 or more laps in 3 of the 4 races at this racetrack with an average start of 19.0. So this has been the problem. He hasn't been able to start well here, but again, he started 27th last year, and he was right there in the top 5. So you're going to get a big number on Kyle. And if you're looking for, again, one of these deep long shots, well, I'll call him a regular long shot because he's not going to be deep, but he'll be a good long shot, like Bubba maybe, that I think give him a shot. All right. And is that it? Carson Hocevar, very disappointing 26th after he started well, but he will be starting, up front. Where is he starting? Not up front. He's starting. This is where he's starting. What am I talking about? I have it switched after the practice run of 8th. So yeah, this is going to be a little bit tougher. I'm okay with this out of Carson. Matter of fact, he was 35-1, which I still think was way too low. They're getting too crazy now on Carson Hocevar with the odds. I'm not saying he should be 100-1 still, but he needs to be in that 50-1 area. So maybe he'll get back to 50-1 now that he's starting 26th, possibly. Should he be in one of those zones like I talked about with some of those other long shots? Absolutely. Absolutely. Matter of fact, look, if you have $10 every week in NASCAR that you have extra, that you can just, I could put additional money on another driver. Save $1 on 6 or 7 of these drivers. Just put them on every week. Put it on the host of ours and all the drivers I talked about. You could put $2 on a couple of them if they're down to 30-1 or something. I think that's a good way to do it because, again, you never know when they're going to win. All right. And they're all capable now. Suarez, disappointing considering Chastain was really good again. But, hey, that's been the story of Suarez. Even though Chastain's been good here, Suarez has not. And again, there's Kyle Larson with a very disappointing 28th, being the big story of the day, really, if you want to think about it. All right, so Chase Briscoe, he is, though, the really good big story. He's on the pole. He was 5th in practice. So if you look at Chase, the reason why I had him as my 3rd choice, and if you're still thinking of taking him now, depending on how low those numbers drop, is because if you look at it last year, Martin Truex Jr. had a really strong car in this race. That's, a good indication. Nice little one. Throw in the fact that Briscoe had been hot the last 2 races. 2 top 5s coming in, pole last week, 22-1. So that was the reason. Because if you look at his history here, it's not good at all. Matter of fact, he was 100-1 in this race last year. But Briscoe is, and is this a surprise that Briscoe has now maybe found something? Would you think it was going to happen overnight, that he was going to come to this new car, even though it's a better team and all that, and it was just everything was going to be great? Sometimes you get lucky like that, but it hasn't been the case for Chase. Now we're getting somewhere, and we know the kid's talented. So watch out for Chase Briscoe. I got to tell you right now, too, he may not be a bad championship pick at this point because he's going to get a huge number. I don't even know where that is at this point in time. I'll find that right now. Before I close out. This would be the last thing I'm gonna give you before I close out because I still should be able to get the odds, the futures on Briscoe. Yes, they're up. So let's see. Chase Briscoe to win the championship is 35 to 1. Okay. So if you're looking for, let's pop that up. If you're looking for some championship drivers, because you're not going to bet on the top guys, because like, why would you invest money on Kyle Larson in May at 3 to 1? I mean, for what reason? That number is going to stay the same for the next 3 months. Why would you take? Why? Forget that. Even Christopher Bell, as we said before the season began, that would have been the time to take him. Our pick the last 2 years. So we feel real good where we got him. What was it? 6 to 1, 7 to 1. You're not getting that anymore. Blaney, look at Blaney. He hasn't been doing much at all this year. He's 6 to 1. They've learned their lesson. Denny Hamlin. Look, I wouldn't even, I got to tell you, none of these drivers, even Blaney, I wouldn't put money on. I wouldn't do it with Hamlin. Byron is a possibility because he's shown that he can get to that championship race now. And 7 to 1 can easily go down to 4 to 1 or 5 to 1 if he wins a couple of races now, especially if he wins, say, on Sunday. So that's where I would go with. That's the first driver with the low odds that I would say if you want to put money on him right now and you really believe in Byron to win the championship, go ahead and take 7 to 1 now, because it might be cut in half by the time you get to the playoffs. Elliott's odds are actually too low for the fact that he hasn't won a race and he doesn't lead laps. The problem is he's a popular driver, so that's why the odds are low. There's money on him no matter. So he's just not a good value play. Reddick, I think those odds are fair. I really do. And to tell you the truth, I can't imagine those odds are going to drop considerably fast. But if you're a Reddick believer, if you really think he's going to get back to the Final Four and maybe compete for a championship, to go ahead and take 11 to 1, because it's possible that might be the best you're going to see. And then now we get the long shot drivers where you got to say, okay, which one of these drivers do you really think can get to that Final Four? Because any of them gets to the Final Four will have a chance. Absolutely Chastain. No doubt about it. 25 to 1, go for it. Right now, Bowman is not showing me anything. So, and the thing with Bowman is he can go out and win a race tomorrow. Those odds will drop to like 15 to 1. And then he may not win another race the rest of the year. But I got to see Bowman get back to where he was when he got hot at the end of the year last year, and whether or not he can do that again. And I'm willing to wait because, honestly, I don't think the odds are going to drop that much. I think so. And I'd rather wait with Bowman than because I think there are other drivers I'd rather invest in right now. Chastain's one of them. Let's see. Kyle, man, can he really win a championship with that team? It's so hard to believe, but it's such a big inviting number. And there's Chase. And I got to tell you right now, why not? Why not at 35 to 1? Because Briscoe has shown that he has talent. And at 35 to 1, if all of a sudden he wins races, you're never going to see anything close to that again. And I think he's going to, and at this point, if he keeps this up, he's winning races, or at least a race. So yes, Briscoe without a doubt. Buescher, 40 to 1 is pretty good. It's pretty good. Wallace, not a championship driver. Neither is Gibbs. At this point, wow, Keselowski. In the beginning of the season, we told you what we thought about Keselowski. But now that he's 70 to 1 and that he's showing something, I would probably throw a couple bucks on him because he's a championship driver. Why wouldn't I at 70 to 1? And then none of these drivers are winning a championship. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about any of this. See, Stenhouse, I think, out of all these drivers, I think Stenhouse has the best chance of being a playoff driver the way I've seen him so far this season, and maybe do something in the playoffs. But winning a championship, yeah, that's it's such a big number that I'm willing to wait, because even if he wins, the odds will probably then go down to like 50. maybe 60, and that's still a big number. And then I'd have to go, oh, now we want to race. But I need more proof. And I've got a big enough number that I'm willing to risk it with. But hey, throw a buck on him, right? 300 to 1. I got no problem with that. I would do that. All right. So anyway, that'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Look out, because this weekend I'm really working hard on, we're either going to put out Patreon or we're going to have a membership here at YouTube. So I keep going back and forth with it, but I'm going to put something out, and I know we want to start potentially with horse racing. So it may not be NASCAR, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to put, even if we start with horse racing, it'll be horse racing and then just a regular tier that anybody can join. But then about a week or two later, we're going to put in our really best tier. And that is going to be the one that's going to have all sorts of really cool stuff, including additional videos, content, more free bonus picks. You can get into our contests, things of that nature. So that's coming real soon here on the channel. In the meanwhile, you can hit that thanks icon on the bottom of the screen if you ever want to donate to the channel. And that's the one of the really good ways to support the channel. Otherwise, subscribe, like, and share. Appreciate your time as always. Enjoy the race tomorrow, and we'll see you in a few days when CJ and I are back to talk about another week in NASCAR, hopefully on Tuesday and hopefully live. So check us out then.